Small Texas venue buzzed with a familiar hum, an old dive where the walls absorbed the echoes of countless artists and their dreams. George Strait stood under the dim lights, gripping his guitar with shaky hands, scanning the sparse crowd before him. The air was thick with the scent of stale beer and whispered regrets. Tonight felt different. The excitement that once filled the room had faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that weighed heavily on his heart. As he played the final chords of his set, the applause barely registered, a soft murmur swallowed by the shadows. George forced a smile, a practiced expression that couldn't mask the sense of longing gnawing at him. After bowing his head, he stepped off the stage, fatigue wrapping around him like a heavy cloak. The blaring lights dimmed, leaving the backstage enveloped in darkness. While packing up, he noticed something fall from the depths of his worn guitar case. An envelope yellowed with age. He picked it up and immediately recognized the handwriting inside. Norma. The world around him stilled. Memories washed over him like a flood, igniting a warmth mixed with a bittersweet ache. This letter was a key to a past he had locked away too tightly. With trembling fingers, he opened it, each word pulling him deeper into a time when their love soared like the Texas wind. Her elegant script spoke of dreams, laughter, and a future that had once seemed so certain. But there it was, too. The regret, the unresolved pain, the lingering questions. "I hope you can forgive me someday," her words begged, filled with unspoken fears of their separation. A tight knot formed in George's throat as he recalled the last moment they shared. Silence had cloaked their parting like a thick fog. He had wished he'd fought harder, that he hadn't let pride dictate his actions. As he read, he felt the weight of his own silence, a haunting melody of lost chances echoing in his mind. The venue felt empty now, the energy drained. George leaned against the wall, the letter held tightly in his fist. Would she still care? Did she even think of him? The sudden realization that he had buried not only his memories but also his heart filled him with urgency. What if he could mend what had been broken? Stepping back into the cool night air, he inhaled deeply, determination flickering inside him. The stars twinkled above, whispering of paths not yet walked, melodies not yet played. Maybe this was his moment to reclaim what once was, to reach out, to confront the shadows of the past. George glanced back at the venue, the laughter and music fading into memory. The road ahead was uncertain, but the spark of hope flickered now, vibrant and persistent, urging him to strum the chords of a forgotten love song. The morning sun cast a golden haze over George's small Texas town, illuminating the familiar roads that wound like melody lines through his memory. It was a place where life moved slow and nostalgia lingered like sweet tea on a hot day. George often found solace here, but today the letter from Norma felt like a weight he could no longer carry alone. As he stepped outside, the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming wildflowers filled the air. He walked toward a nearby field, where the wind played a soft tune through the tall grass, coaxing memories from the depths of his heart. With each step, images flickered before him like an old film reel. Days spent laughing with Norma, their hands entwined, dreams shared beneath the sprawling Texas sky glittering with constellations. He could still hear the sweet, gentle laugh that had always made the world feel brighter. They were young once, two souls full of ambition and whims, but their futures were sculpted by the harsh realities they faced. He remembered lying on the hood of his old truck, the stars shining down like a million tiny voices, as they dreamed of becoming musicians, of making a life filled with rhythm and love. "Promise me we'll always make music together," she had said, her eyes sparkling like the night sky. "Forever and always," he had vowed, sealing it with a kiss. But life intervened, as it so often does. They drifted apart, caught in the currents of family expectations, misunderstandings, and pride. George often replayed those days, questioning how things had turned from hopeful dreams into bitter regrets. The laughter had faded, the music quieted, and each note that hung in the air felt like an echo of what once was. Lost in his thoughts, he leaned against an old oak tree, the rough bark grounding him. A desire washed over him, a call to find her again, to discover if the echoes of that love could be reclaimed. What had kept them apart for so long? How had they let the threads of their connection unravel? Shaking the thoughts loose like a farmer, with the dust off his boots, he pulled out his guitar, the familiar weight settling against his chest. As he strummed a few chords, the sound resonated through the open field, harmonizing with the whispers of the wind. The lyrics poured out, weaving together the tapestry of memories, the joy, the heartache, the shared dreams. Under the stars where we used to dream, with a promise of love, or so it seemed, but time's cruel hands took you from me. Now I'm searching for the way back to be free. The song took shape, his heart releasing pieces of itself with each note. This music was his sanctuary, a way to express what had long festered within him. The shadows of doubt danced away, replaced with the radiant light of hope flickering in his chest. He pictured Norma's face again, felt the warmth of her presence. The realization struck him. She was not just a chapter in his past. She was a touchstone, a reminder of who he was supposed to be. Her freedom, he recalled, had felt like a loss, but in reality, it was her way of saying goodbye, a sacrifice etched in bravery. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching, breaking his reverie. Turning, he found David Watson, his old friend and fellow musician. David's face was lined with years, but illuminated by a gentle warmth that had always made George feel at ease. "Hey, partner," David greeted, clapping George on the back. "I thought I might find you here. You've been a ghost lately." George offered a faint smile, the weight of his thoughts still resting heavily on his shoulders. "Just trying to make sense of things, you know." David squinted against the sun. Curiosity sparked in his eyes. "Is it about that letter I saw you with last night?" George hesitated, wrestling with the urge to confide in his friend. But David had always been a beacon of wisdom, steady amidst the chaos. Finally, he nodded, handing David the letter. "It's from Norma." David unfolded the delicate paper, scanning its contents. Silence stretched between them, filled with the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of a tractor in the fields. "She left because she thought she was holding you back," David finally said, his voice low. "But it seems like you both owe it to yourselves to clarify what happened." George's gaze flickered to the horizon, where the sun dipped toward the edge of an uncertain day. "What if I'm too late? What if she's moved on with her life?" David placed a comforting hand on George's shoulder. "You won't know until you try. You kept the music alive, George. That means something. If the love was real, it can still be real." With a deep breath, George felt a stir of resolve bubbling within him. He thought of the years lost, the walls surrounding his heart. The time for hesitation was over. David was right. He had to reach out, to find closure or perhaps begin anew. "Let's go find her," George declared, the conviction in his voice hardening into something tangible and real. David grinned, a spark of excitement igniting in his eyes. "Now that's the spirit. Let's see if that spark can still light a fire." As they started to walk back towards town, George began humming a new tune, a melody laced with hope and an eagerness to reclaim the echoes of a forgotten love. Together, they ventured toward the unknown, the chords of George's heart blending with the promise of what could still be. The Texas highway stretched out before George, a ribbon of asphalt that wound through picturesque fields and skies painted in warm hues. With each mile that passed, anticipation mingled with anxiety in the cramped car. The engine hummed softly, a comforting sound that matched the rhythm of his racing heart as David navigated their way through the bustling streets of Dallas. "What do you think she's up to?" David asked, glancing over at George, whose focus was momentarily lost in the blurred scenery outside. "Last I heard, she was working at a record label," George replied, his voice carrying a weight of uncertainty. "Probably building a life without me." "She might be waiting for you," David suggested, his tone laced with encouragement. "You never know." Taking a deep breath, George could feel the burden of missed opportunities press down on him. Memories of Norma flickered in his mind like fireflies in the dusk, bright moments shared beneath a canopy of stars, laughter blending with dreams of music and future plans. But that had been yesterday, and today felt daunting. They parked outside a small diner, a familiar local spot that had seen thousands of dreams come and go. The warm aroma of coffee and frying bacon wafted through the air, comforting yet bittersweet. They slid into a booth, and George stared into his cup, regretting not reaching out sooner. The lingering gap of lost time gnawed at him as David chatted about local music events, but George's mind was already drifting to the past. "I should have called her ages ago," George murmured, absent-mindedly stirring the cream into his coffee. "Hey, you're calling her now," David reassured, sensing George's retreating spirit. "That's what matters. Just think how excited she'll be to hear from you." George withdrew his phone, fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through old pictures, gazing at snapshots of Norma. confident, full of life, her energy a bright spot in his weary world. He remembered their last moments together with an ache in his chest, the unanswered questions and the weight of their silence. But now, the yearning to reach out propelled him forward. "I'm going to do it," he said, drawing a steadying breath. "Good," David encouraged, grinning widely. He pressed the call button, heart pounding like a drum as the phone rang. A part of him yearned for reassurance, while the other braced for the unexpected. "Hey, is this really you?" Norma's voice pierced through the static, warm and familiar, pulling him back into the sweetness of memory. "It is. Norma," he stammered, a warmth spreading through him, chasing away the cold of doubt. "How have you been?" "I've been good," she replied with genuine enthusiasm. "Busy working on new music. What about you?" "Trying to find my way back," he admitted, his heart pounding as he ventured deeper into uncharted territory. "And I wanted to talk about us." "Us?" she echoed, a hint of surprise lacing her voice. "Let's meet," he proposed. "Can we meet at that cafe we liked?" "Sure, I'd love that," she replied, and George exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Moments later, they arrived at the cafe, George's heart racing, anticipation mingling with a familiar sense of trepidation. The world outside seemed to fade away as he took that first step inside, memories flooding back with the scent of fresh coffee and baked goods clinging to the air. He spotted her almost immediately. The glow of her presence was unmistakable. Norma looked just as beautiful as he remembered, her eyes sparkling with the same warmth that had drawn him in all those years ago. When they locked eyes, it was as if time condensed, shedding the years apart to reawaken familiarity. "George!" she exclaimed, rising to greet him, a smile breaking across her face with the radiance of 1,000 sunrises. "Hi," he replied, the sound almost tentative. The world around them faded, leaving just the two of them suspended in time. "Wow, it's so good to see you," she said, her words crackling with excitement. As they settled into a booth, the initial awkwardness blossomed into easy conversation. Laughter bubbled up, weaving through tales of their pasts, intertwined with shared memories. "I've missed this," George realized, a voice inside him whispering of the love that never quite faded. Norma leaned in, her expression softening. "I felt we left things unresolved. I thought of you often." The admission hit George with a force he hadn't expected. "I did too. I guess I was afraid to face what happened, afraid to reach out." "We both carried our burdens," she replied candidly, "but I'm glad we're here now." As their conversation flowed, something began to shift within George. The pain of separation dulled, and the warmth of reconnection flooded back into his heart. Hope blossomed in small moments, shared laughter weaving a tapestry of understanding, dreams rekindling as easily as when they were young. In that cozy cafe, beneath the evening light filtering through large windows, George felt the stirrings of something pure and profound. Just as old songs resonated with new meanings, perhaps they too could reclaim their melody, renewing a love that felt as familiar and vibrant as the music that accompanied their hearts. As laughter trailed off, the cozy cafe transformed into an intimate stage, their shared history unfolding like the verses of a well-loved song. George watched Norma, her smile stirring something deep within him, stirring up clouds of nostalgia that meshed with threads of hope. She looked radiant, and in that moment, everything around them faded into the background. "Do you remember that night we played under the stars?" Norma asked, her eyes brightening. "Of course," George replied, a warm smile returning as nostalgia washed over him. "You sang crazy with such passion, I thought you were going to wake the whole town." Norma chuckled, a melodic sound that danced around them, reigniting the flame of connections that time had attempted to dim. "And we thought we were invincible back then, didn't we?" "Yeah," he said, feeling the weight lift as they recalled that simple, careless joy. The world seemed so open, endless possibilities all waiting for us. "What happened to that?" she asked, her expression turning more serious yet tender. George hesitated, the past creeping back in, a bittersweet melody. "I guess we let life pull us apart. I let pride and fear build a wall. I thought I was protecting us, but it did the opposite." She nodded slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. "I felt like I was holding you back. Leaving was the hardest choice, but I thought it was what you needed. I realize now I needed to communicate more, to let you know how much I cared," he confessed, an edge of vulnerability creeping into his voice. "I thought cutting ties would protect us both, but it just left me empty." Norma reached across the table, her hand gently landing over his. The warmth of her touch sent shivers down George's spine. We have the chance to rewrite our story, George. We shouldn't allow the past to anchor us. We can make new memories. A cascade of emotions flooded through him, 100 songs colliding together in a harmonious blend. The sadness, grief, and yearning of their separation began to dissolve, replaced by the awakening of something fragile yet powerful: hope. They spent hours talking, catching up on the years lost to silence, weaving tales of dreams and challenges faced. Norma shared her journey through the music industry, the sleepless nights, relentless auditions, and moments of defeat followed by triumph. Her passion radiated, igniting something deep within George. "I still write songs," she said shyly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'd love for you to hear my new ones. They're about what we lost, and what I hope we can find again." "Really? I'd love that," he replied, feeling his heart race as he envisioned walking beside her along the path of their shared dreams. "You've always had a way with words. Your voice is so real." As they continued to talk, the cafe filled with other patrons and the soft murmur of conversation, yet their world felt separate and intimate, sealed by a budding curiosity and an unspoken longing. Every shared laugh, every lingering glance fused their past with hope, like the notes of a great ballad finding their rhythm once more. As the evening unfolded, George realized that he had long been holding on to fragments of pain. The fear of vulnerability had stopped him from allowing love to flourish anew. Yet sitting across from Norma, he felt an awakening, as if coaxed from dormancy. "What do you think about performing together again?" he suggested, the thought emerging spontaneously. "Even just for fun, like we used to?" Norma's eyes lit up with mischief. "I'd be down for that. We could call it The Reunion. Sounds like a tour name, doesn't it? A little taste of nostalgia." A grin split across George's face. "I can already hear the crowd cheering us on, but we must practice. I've been rusty." "It won't matter," she laughed. "We'll find our groove again. It's music. It's what we do." With each rehashed plan, George felt the path of the future stretching before them, brightened by possibility. But beyond just music, he sensed a deeper revival, a rekindling love that hadn't been extinguished, just buried under life's heavy weight. As they left the cafe, the twilight enveloped them in a gentle embrace. Stars began twinkling above, echoing their earlier conversations about endless skies and dreams. It was a perfect canvas for what they had to share. The past was but a prologue to what could rise from its ashes. Norma stepped closer to George, her hand brushing against his as they walked. "I've always believed that every ending is a new beginning," she said softly. "And sometimes we just need to make that leap." "I'm ready for that leap," George declared, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I don't want to lose you again, not now." Together they walked through the cooling night, laughter resonating in the stillness, a soothing balm on wounds both old and new. There was still uncertainty, signs of caution that tangled with the tender hope dominating their hearts, but they were moving forward, hand in hand. As they stood in the soft glow of the streetlights, surrounded by the familiar sounds and sights of their upbringing, George felt a powerful reassurance wash over him. He was finally willing to confront the past, ready to transform sorrow into song and isolation into companionship. "Can you believe we're here together again?" he asked, the warmth of her presence inspiring him to dream. "Believe it," she said, her voice a melodic whisper. With that promise echoing between them, they began to plan. A brighter future, a stage awaiting their sounds, their love redefined amid laughter and shared memories. In the symphony of their lives, the music had returned, reigniting the spark of a love that had remained alive beneath the surface, waiting for its moment to rise anew. Days turned into weeks, as George and Norma delved into rekindling their musical bond, working together in local venues, small cafes, and community halls. The anticipation of their performances electrified George, breathing life into the music that had long been hidden within him. Each note they played lifted the weight of the past, allowing him to express emotions he had long since bottled. They practiced tirelessly, the sound of their combined voices harmonizing beautifully. George felt the thrill of the stage flood back into his veins as they took their first joint performance for an eager crowd of familiar faces at a local pub. The warmth of the room enveloped them, a soft buzz of anticipation in the air. With the first strum of the guitar, George found himself lost in the rhythm, the melody intertwining with memories of laughter and sweat-soaked dreams. Norma joined in, her voice rising in tandem with his, a perfect mixture of sweetness and strength, invoking a harmony that felt both old and profoundly new. The energy surged, and their connection transformed the performance into something nearly magical. As their voices wove together in Mexican melodies and country twang, the crowd responded, clapping and singing along. George's heart raced as he caught Norma's eye from across the stage, their shared joy framing a moment that felt like home. As they wrapped up their last song, the crowd erupted in applause, the echoes of their shared history reverberating between them. "Believe it!" Norma shouted over the cheering crowd, a radiant smile breaking across her face. George, still riding the high of their performance, couldn't help but laugh. "We really did it." But as the days of rehearsals turned into nights filled with luminous possibilities, cracks began to form in their delicate resurgence. Small misunderstandings blossomed into larger conversations, echoing faintly with the unresolved wounds of their past. Their old fears slipped back, and it wasn't long before they found themselves juggling the complexities of rekindled love and the pressures of pursuing their dreams. One evening, they sat in George's living room, guitars resting against their legs, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tensions. "I just think we need to get serious about the next steps," Norma said, her tone firm yet uncertain, searching for his gaze for reassurance. George stilled, sensing the weight of her words. "What do you mean by serious? We're doing this, we're performing again, and we're having fun." "Fun isn't going to cut it. We need to approach this like a real opportunity," she insisted, her brows knitting together. "We have to stand out, get noticed, book real gigs. It feels like we're just treading water." "I know that," George replied defensively, "but I thought we were in this together for the joy of making music, not just to chase a contract. I can't chase something I lost once." Norma's eyes flared with passion, a fire ignited by her need for progress. "But don't you want to create something lasting? Something bigger than ourselves?" "I do, but I don't want to wind up resentful like last time." George raised his voice, frustration bubbling over. "Look, I want to succeed, but not if it costs us this bond we're building." In the silence that followed, the air cooled between them. Deep-rooted doubts crept back in, echoing what had once pushed them apart. George felt the familiar grip of fear closing like a vice around his heart, a fear that derailed their hard-earned progress. "I'm not saying we have to be ruthless," Norma said softly, her demeanor shifting, "but growth requires risks, and we can't let our fears dictate that." George sighed, the weight of her plea resonating. "Maybe you're right. I'm afraid of losing you again. It took so long to find my way back." Norma moved closer, resting a hand on his knee. "We won't lose each other, not if we communicate. Together we can navigate the unknown." George felt comforted by her touch, yet doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. "How do I know it will be different this time?" Her eyes bored into his, sincere and unwavering. "Because we're different. We've grown. We've learned." With her words, he could see glimmers of the bright future they had begun to carve. Yet the shadows still loomed large. Periods of clarity alternated with the uncertainty of battles that lay ahead. Over the course of the next few weeks, they found themselves in rehearsals filled with laughter, minute disputes, and moments of rhythm, dancing in and out of harmony. They participated in local open mics, slowly building their reputation, yet the tensions between their personalities sometimes stumbled into their collaboration. During another gig one night, George felt a pang of dread. The crowd was smaller than anticipated. This time it felt like more than petty disappointment. After their set, the energy did not crackle the same way. "Why bother placing such high expectations?" George muttered under his breath, wiping sweat from his brow. Norma caught his remark just as they were leaving the stage. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means what's the point of stressing about every performance? Bigger crowds don't define us," he exclaimed, his words laced with frustration. "Seriously?" she shot back, exasperation laying stark in her voice. "It's supposed to matter. It's what we want out of this. Why can't you see that?" They stood in the cool night air, tension fizzing between them like static electricity. "Maybe you want something more than I do. I just want us to enjoy it," George replied, feeling the conflict pull them apart instead of drawing them closer. Norma's shoulders slumped, her eyes welling with emotion as she turned to leave. "If you can't see what this means to me, then maybe we need to reevaluate what's at stake here. Norma, wait, he called out, reaching for her arm but stopping just short of contact, unsure if his touch might ignite a bigger fire. I just don't want to lose you. I can't stand still while I'm waiting, she said, voice tremulous. And if you can't support that, then... Her words hung thick in the air, each syllable a heavy penance for both of them. George felt the chasm between them widen, shadowed by the burdens of old fears and unresolved emotions. In that moment, he watched as she slipped away into the night, every step resonating with the ache of what could be. The tumult within him echoed the chaos of his internal world, the comforts of their past fraught with uncertainty. He stood alone amidst the cooling dusk, heart heavy, music swirling in his mind. Did finding their rhythm mean sacrificing the love that blossomed anew? The days following their heated argument were punctuated by silence. George threw himself into writing, pouring his heart into a new song that encapsulated the raw pain of separation and the magical potential of reconciliation. The notes paired with his emotions, creating an outpouring of melody that mirrored his turmoil. Each chord felt like a conversation he never had with Norma, and as he played day after day in the solitude of his home, he realized he had to face his fears, not just for his music but for her, for them. One evening, while the sun set in a beautiful swirl of oranges and purples, George sat on his porch, strumming slowly as the golden light cascaded around him. The air buzzed with evening sounds, crickets chirping, the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hum of a tractor preparing for nightfall. It was peaceful, almost surreal, but the weight of longing hung thick in the warm Texas air. He remembered the laughter that filled the cafe, the connection they'd shared on stage, the way their voices intermingled as if they had never parted. George felt an urgency pulse within him. He could not let that slip away. Resolute, he picked up his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen, uncertainty creeping in. Would she even want to hear from him after the way things had ended? But deep down, he knew they had something worth fighting for. With a deep breath, he tapped out a message. Norma, can we talk? I miss you. He pressed send before doubt could falter his resolve. The anticipation stretched as hours ticked away. Just as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, his phone buzzed. Can we meet tomorrow? Her response was brief, but the weight behind it was heavy with unspoken sentiments. Of course. Anywhere you'd like, he replied, heart racing. The following afternoon, George found himself at the same cafe where they had rekindled their bond. He arrived early, pacing with restless energy, nerves tangled with hope. The familiar environment carried memories of laughter and shared dreams, but the vibes had shifted. The optimistic atmosphere was now accompanied by a chill of uncertainty. When Norma arrived, he was caught off guard by the distance in her eyes. She looked radiant yet guarded, the spring in her step tempered by the weight of their last encounter. Hey, she greeted, a small smile forming but lingering unease painting her features. Hey, he replied, waving her to sit across from him. The air crackled with unspoken tension as silence stretched between them like an unwoven cord. Finally, she broke it. I'm glad you reached out, she whispered, her voice hinting at vulnerability. I had to, George admitted, his heart hammering in his chest. I realized keeping things bottled up won't work. I was scared of losing you. Again. Her eyes softened, revealing the hurt that had lingered since their last conversation. I felt the same, she confessed. I just want what's best for us, for you. The more I pushed for our dreams, the more I felt you pulling away. George nodded, guilt washing over him. I know, and it took losing sight of you for me to realize that we can have both, music and each other. I was so focused on fear that I didn't see it. Norma leaned in, her gaze piercing through him. We're not the same people we were when we first began, George. We've both grown. We need to figure out how to pull those parts together, not apart. Then let's do that, George proposed earnestly. Let's make a promise, to communicate openly, to face our challenges together, and to not be afraid of the risks, she finished, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. Exactly, he said, relief flooding him. I want to fight for us, for everything we can create together, not just on stage, but in real life. Norma smiled, an unmistakable warmth returning. And I promise to respect your pace. We can grow, build, and dream together. As the conversation turned toward music, the unease that had enveloped them began to fade. They started weaving plans for an upcoming open mic, distilling their ambitions into songs that embodied both healing and hope. The back-and-forth laughter returned, slowly erasing the barriers they had encountered. Over the next weeks, they rehearsed with renewed vigor. With each session, George found himself not only rediscovering Norma's joy, but also his own. The songs evolved, rising from heartache to empowerment, their collective struggle shaping a new narrative that celebrated their past while looking toward future horizons. As they stood side by side on stage at their first open mic together since reconciling, George could feel the palpable excitement in the air. The crowd was larger this time, and it buzzed with energy and hope. He began with a song that spoke of his fears and his journey back toward love, raw and honest. As Norma joined in harmonizing, their voices blended perfectly, reflecting their own vulnerabilities and strength. The audience responded with applause and cheers, and as they transitioned into their second song, a melody that celebrated unity and resilience, George felt as if they were not just sharing music, but adding a new chapter to their love story. Each verse became a testament to the strength they had found together, reflecting the journey of growth they had navigated. With each note played, George felt the weight of the past lift away, replaced by a sense of belonging and an unwavering partnership. Afterward, they stepped down from the stage, breathless and exhilarated, the applause washing over them like a tide. "Can you feel it?" Norma laughed, breathless, part exhilaration, part disbelief. "Yeah," he whispered, catching her gaze. This is just the beginning." Both knew there would be more challenges on the horizon, yet they stood together, ready to face whatever came. Every step felt like a promise, not just to their music, but to each other, and the newfound love they had forged through trust and unwavering support. As they walked away into the glow of the Texas night, George felt something profound stir within him, a sense of renewal, a fullness that vibrated through every chord they played. With hand-in-hand steps, they stepped boldly into the future that awaited them, their music topping the charts of their hearts. In the weeks that followed their successful performance, George and Norma flourished as both musicians and partners. Each rehearsal transformed into a shared experience of creativity and understanding as they crafted songs that reflected not only their love, but their growth together. One evening, filled with the warm glow of their home studio, George looked up from his guitar. "What if we take our music on the road? A small tour across Texas?" Norma's eyes lit up. "Absolutely. There's so much we need to share." With fresh ambition, they scheduled a series of gigs, starting at a well-loved venue that had been a launching pad for many artists. On the evening of their first show, the air buzzed with excitement, the energy crackling backstage as they prepared to take the stage. George glanced at Norma, who wore her trademark smile, radiating encouragement. "You ready?" "For anything," she said, squeezing his hand as the stage beckoned. As they stepped into the spotlight, the warmth enveloped them. The audience greeted them with applause, their anticipation palpable. George started with a song about fear and love, their journey written in lyrics. Norma's harmonies complemented his voice perfectly, weaving their past into a tapestry of hope. The crowd responded with cheers, and as they moved through their set list, George felt the magic of connection grow stronger. Each verse resonated with the audience, transforming their personal experiences into universal feelings. After their final song, an anthem of renewal and hope, the applause felt like a tide washing over them. Breathless, George turned to Norma, happiness bubbling within him. "We did it!" "Yeah, it's incredible. This is just the start," she replied, her joy infectious. As weeks turned into a whirlwind of performances, each experience deepened their bond. They faced challenges, late nights, logistical hiccups, exhaustion, but through it all, they held on to their promise of open communication and support. Every song became a shared narrative, drawing them closer. One night, sitting together on their porch beneath a starlit sky, George and Norma reflected on their journey. "I didn't think I could feel this way again," George admitted, as he took her hand. She smiled, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "We've both changed, George, and it's beautiful to see. We're creating something real." The intimacy of the moment solidified their connection. They had traversed through shadows to find joy, resurrecting a love built on trust and artistic passion. As time went on, they were no longer just sharing their story. They were resonating with others. With each performance, their music echoed the themes of love and resilience, leaving impressions on hearts wherever they went. Finally, after one particularly resonant show, they stood backstage, clapping with gratitude as the crowd celebrated. George leaned in close. "This is our life now, isn't it?" "Yes," Norma said, holding his gaze, "and it's exactly where we're meant to be." At that moment, under the glow of warm stage lights and enthusiastic applause, they understood the true essence of their partnership. Music wasn't just notes and chords. It was the bridge connecting their past to their hopeful future. Hand in hand, they stepped out into the night, the Texas stars twinkling above them. Laughter spilled between them, resonating with the rhythm of their shared dreams, once fragile, but now bold and true. Together they walked into a future defined by love, harmony, and a symphony forever composing on the horizon, a melody crafted from heartbreak, resilience, and an unwavering belief in each other.